On an early morning when the wind was still, a disciple, sitting alone in the temple courtyard, said, "Master, I often get angry. The feeling of being unknown by anyone makes my heart sink with a single word, and anxiety overwhelms me even over small matters. Why is my heart so weak?" At that moment, the Buddha quietly looked at him and said this: "The reason your heart is troubled is because you believe that feeling is you. However, emotions are like the wind, and if you chase after that wind, you will only be endlessly shaken. There are days like that in life. For no reason, I feel anxious, and even though no one hates me, I feel lonely and unfair, and sometimes my whole body flushes with embarrassment over a single word. When those moments repeat, I start to avoid people. The world feels frightening, and it's always my side that crumbles. What we need at such times is not to forcefully suppress our anger or to stifle our anxiety. It is simply learning to quietly observe that feeling, not mistaking it for our own. And from that point on, we gradually begin to feel free. The Buddha said, all pain begins with the illusion that it is my heart. Observe that heart, but do not cling to it. Emotions are like clouds, and you are the sky. How is your heart right now? Is there an inexplicable anxiety weighing down on your chest? Or has the anger you've been holding back risen to the surface again today? Then this video is the time of the Buddha, prepared for you, so that the days you have endured so far are not in vain. Let's slowly walk together to the center of those emotions today, so that your kind heart does not get hurt anymore. Now we begin. When you feel angry or anxious, the Buddha said this. The Buddha said, "Dear one, emotions are not you, nor are they your true nature. They are merely passing phenomena, so let them pass." We often say this: "I'm really angry right now. I'm naturally sensitive, and my anxious personality is the problem." But is that really the case? Is that emotion mine? Is that emotion me? Take a moment to reflect. We had to smile even when we were sad, and hold back our anger since we were young. As a result, our emotions piled up and were suppressed, leading us to mistakenly believe that they became who we are. However, emotions are merely guests that stay for a while. If you hold on to that emotion and make it your identity, from that moment on, that emotion becomes the master and we become its servants. There was a disciple. He always faced people with a face full of anger and couldn't sleep at night due to his anxious mind. He said to the Buddha, "Master, I cannot trust people. The world is unfair, and my heart is always uneasy. Even if someone speaks a little loudly, my insides turn and my heart sinks." Then the Buddha spoke quietly. "What resides in your heart is not the world, but the thoughts you hold. Do not try to change the world. Instead, observe that heart. Emotions are like passing clouds. Those clouds can hold rain or block the sunlight. But the important thing is that you are not the cloud, but the sky that embraces the cloud. The sky neither hates the cloud nor tries to catch it. It simply holds it gently and lets it pass by. When anxiety arises, do not suppress your anger. Instead, observe that feeling. This is not me. This is just a passing emotion. That feeling can no longer break you down." The Buddha did not tell us to suppress our emotions. Instead, he advised us to observe our emotions. If you watch it, it will disappear. If you hold on to it, it will become painful. You are not a slave to your emotions. You are a wise being who observes emotions. Now, let's start practicing to listen to what your emotions are telling you when they arise, and simply let them pass. In that moment, your heart will begin to calm down. Little by little, the Buddha said, emotions are like waves. If they are raging, stop and observe them. The moment when emotions rise is the most important. How you react at that moment can change your day, your relationships, and your career. Getting angry is like pouring oil on a fire, and suppressing anxiety invites a stronger wind. Then, what were the teachings of the Buddha regarding the practice of stopping and observing? The first method is the practice of observing the breath. When emotions arise, the breath is what comes first, before words. When the breath becomes rough, the mind also becomes rough. And when the breath is calm, the emotions also become calm. When someone says something that disregards me, my heart races, my face gets hot, and in that moment, when words are about to burst out, the Buddha speaks. Close your mouth and focus on your breath. As the breath comes in and goes out, anger and words begin to gradually fade away. What hurts you is not the words of others, but your own habit of reacting immediately to those words. Changing habits is difficult, but the moment we focus on our breath, we can cut the ties of those habits. The second method is to look at a glass of water. When you're angry, try holding a cup in your hand. Gaze quietly at a glass of water and observe whether the water is calm or rippling. Look at your reflection in the water. Water is a mirror that reflects emotions. When my heart is unsettled, the water also ripples. But strangely, when I gaze calmly at the water, my heart also settles down. The story of a mother who cried due to conflicts with her daughter. There was a mother who heard hurtful words from her daughter every day. The daughter, who was strong-willed and logical, reacted sensitively even to the slightest worry from her mother. Mom was always wrong. Why can't you trust me? Don't meddle in my life. Every word you say hurts. And that mother couldn't say anything and cried alone under the blanket every night. Those tears were mixed with self-blame and loneliness, wondering what I did so wrong. She attended the temple, holding a small rosary, and quietly prayed. Then a monk quietly spoke to her. When you are angry, do not try to speak. Instead, hold a glass of water and look at it. If the face reflected in the water is smiling, it's okay to speak. However, if that face is twisted with anger, remain silent until the water settles. From that day on, whenever the mother heard her daughter speak, she would go to the kitchen and pour herself a glass of water. At first, it was just an action to calm my feelings, but later it changed into a prayer. Holding the water, I looked at my reflection and said, this one is still immature. I was like that once too. If we talk now, we'll hurt each other. Just wait a little longer. One day, my daughter said, Mom, why haven't you said anything lately? My mother smiled and replied, Mom is a fool, so she shortened her words. Then the daughter quietly said, Mom, I'm sorry. Sometimes not. Saying anything is the strongest form of love. And the way to not speak begins with looking at that heart first. In the second story, there was a couple whose wife would explode at her husband's words during tea meditation. After 20 years of marriage, others said they were a happy couple, but an invisible blade of emotions often passed between them. My husband often ends his sentences like this: Why can't you do it any better? Oh, I forgot again. You're always like this. Hearing that made my wife furious again. Always like this? The contempt and criticism contained in those words tore at my heart. At first I shouted, then I cried, and after that, I completely shut my mouth. I cannot forget the words I heard from a small monk when I went to a temple at the suggestion of an acquaintance. It's not the words that shake the heart, but the heart that interprets those words that is shaken. When you're angry, don't respond with words instead. Pick up a teacup and sit down. As the tea cools, so too will your heart settle. Since that day, the wife did not react immediately, even when her husband made sarcastic remarks. Instead, she poured warm barley tea into a teacup and sat by the window, watching the steam rise from the cup. And as she sipped the tea, she repeated to herself, "That person isn't blaming me. They're just having a tough time in their life right now. If I don't react to this right now, I can protect myself." One day, my husband asked, "Why aren't you getting angry at me these days?" She quietly smiled and said, "Now, instead of listening to your words, I've decided to listen to my heart first." That brief moment of looking at my heart, without reacting to emotions, stops all the fights. In that moment, you have not conquered your anger, but rather you have become free from it. The Buddha said, "Comparison breeds foolishness, judgment brings suffering, and discernment opens the door to endless karma." The reason we get angry mostly stems from the workings of the discriminating mind. This is right and that is wrong. They are better than me, and I am worse. Why do I have to be treated this way? These thoughts become the embers of boiling anger and unending anxiety. There was a disciple in my heart who spoke of weighing the story of murder. My fellow disciples gradually received praise from the Buddha, while I felt like I was always quietly buried, and my heart became weary. Then one day he asked the Buddha, "Master, I practice just like everyone else. Why do you not speak to me? Why do you not speak to me?" The Buddha smiled gently and replied, "You are not currently practicing. Your mind is wandering as you compare yourself to others. When the mind is wandering, nothing settles. We often hope to be better than someone else and seek more recognition, constantly weighing ourselves. However, the standard of that scale is merely an illusion. In my heart, when we compare ourselves to others, exaggerate a single word from them, and imagine intentions within those words, our hearts inevitably reach the threshold of hell. The practice of letting go of discernment and simply observing. The Buddha taught practitioners to see things as they truly are. If you can listen to what the other person says without doubt, and if you can accept it with, "Oh, I see," when you don't get the reaction you expected, then you have already let go of half of your suffering. Next time you feel moved by someone's words, ask yourself this: "This is just my opinion. Could it really be true? Am I seeing the truth right now, or interpreting it? Is the reason I'm angry because I'm judging this statement?" These three questions are the keys that unlock the lock of discernment in the heart. The Buddha's serene metaphor is a hand that holds the poison. The Buddha illustrated discernment in this way. Holding on to anger and judging others is like wielding a poisoned sword, trying to stab someone. That sword will harm your own hand before it injures others. We often don't realize that we are hurting ourselves every time we judge others. But in the moment you stop that heart, you quietly realize how much pain disappears. Comparison makes you anxious. Judgment spreads into anger, and discernment becomes nonsensical. However, if you can let go of that heart and simply observe, your day will become much calmer, and your karma will no longer accumulate. Now, practice simply observing the mind that tries to judge the world and myself in relation to others. The mind is trying to compare again. It's interpreting again. Just that awareness means the practice has already begun. The Buddha said, "The feelings you are experiencing right now did not just arise today. They are the results of past actions. that have blossomed again in the field of the mind. We often blame ourselves. Why can't I control my anger like this? Why am I so sensitive to these words? Why am I the only one feeling this anxious? However, the answer to that question is not simply a matter of personality or lack of willpower. That emotion may be a trace left by your karma. The workings of karma. Emotions are shadows of memory. Emotions are not just simple feelings. They are reactions shaped by the memories, wounds, and thoughts from your life, responding like a habit. A person who was often scolded as a child easily becomes intimidated by even small criticisms. A person with many memories of not being loved tends to get very angry at indifference. A person who is always compared to others feels uncomfortable emotions even at a friend's success. That emotion is not something newly created. It is an old feeling flowing again, along the path of the heart that has already been formed. The Buddha likened karma to a path that stumbles over a stone. You walk down the road. The reason you often trip over the stone is that there are stones on that path, not because you are walking incorrectly. However, if you see the stone and still do not remove it, then it becomes your responsibility. The stone of emotions is the terrain of the heart, shaped by karma. However, clearing, polishing, and refining, that stone is a choice we can make at this very moment. There was a man who found it particularly difficult to hold back his anger when he was ignored. He would blush at trivial jokes and get upset at a single critical remark, often losing his temper. I feel like I'm the only one being ignored, surrounded by people who always look down on me. He sat in front of the Buddha and spoke. Why does it hurt so much? Even though it's not a big deal, the Buddha quietly asks him, what words have stayed with you the most from your childhood? He replied, my father always said that you can't do it. No matter what you do, it's not enough. That phrase still lingers in my ears. The Buddha nodded and spoke. You are not hurting from someone's words. Right now, rather. Those words are touching your old memories. The anger is not directed at the present, but is unleashed upon the shadows of the past. Only then did he burst into tears, and those tears were not of anger, but of self-pity. He finally understood. The reason I'm hurting now is that I've been hating myself. Since that day, no matter how harshly someone spoke to him, he quietly placed his hand on his chest and repeated to himself, it's okay, you're doing well enough now. On the day he could say that to himself, he was able to smile quietly without getting angry at anyone. When practicing to cleanse karma, do this when emotions arise. The Buddha said, karma is not fixed when wisdom is cultivated. Emotions may arise. When this happens, try practicing as follows. Do not reject your emotions. This emotion is coming up again. It's a reaction to an old memory. Instead of suppressing the emotion, observe it as if you are gently holding a crying child. Practice embracing that emotion with kindness. Repeat the phrase, Namu, Kwan Seum Bosel, like a lifeboat, floating on the sea of emotions, bringing your mind back to the surface. Emotions are the shadows of karma. Don't blame the shadow, but look towards the light. Even if that emotion doesn't disappear, if you can avoid being swayed by it, you are already in the process of breaking free from your karma. Rather than asking why I am like this, try to comfort yourself by saying, I have lived like this. That kindness will be the key to free you from your suffering. One day, a disciple sitting next to the Buddha cautiously spoke up. Master, I have come to understand a lot now. There are ways to manage anger, ways to let go of anxiety, and ways to look at karma. But when I hear just one word from someone, I get shaken again, even though I have clearly studied my heart. Why am I still so unsettled? The Buddha looked at him and quietly said this: "The reason you are shaken is that you still think of emotions as enemies. Emotions are not something you should fight against, but guests you should embrace. When a guest arrives, you welcome them, and when they leave, you bid them farewell. We all wish to be the masters of our emotions. I want to live a calm and steadfast life, no longer swayed by a single word or caught up in anxious thoughts. However, being the master of your emotions does not mean living a life without emotions. You can feel anger, shed tears, and experience anxiety, but even in all those moments, we can still speak. Yes, you came. It's okay this time. I'll watch over you. If you can say that one word to yourself, you have already become the master of your heart. It's okay if emotions rise up. Polishing the heart does not mean suppressing emotions. It's not about forcing yourself to hold back your anger until it bursts. It's about observing, accepting and letting go of that anxious feeling without suppressing it and letting it turn into illness. A stream of water does not stop just because you block it. However, if you change its direction, the water will no longer overflow. Your heart is the same. When you're angry, what you need is not to say that this feeling is wrong, but rather to acknowledge, "Oh, I'm struggling right now," with a sense of warmth. That is what practice is. That is compassion. That is the path that the Buddha wishes for us. There was an elder who spoke of his father, praying with his eyes closed. "Living with my son and daughter-in-law often hurt my feelings. My son comes home late. My daughter-in-law doesn't say a word, and my grandchild's attitude seems to disregard me. All of these weighed heavily on my heart. But one day he started to speak less and began to pray. At night I sat alone by the kitchen window, hands clasped, and simply closed my eyes, murmuring like this: 'This is also my heart. This is also the burden I have created, not them.' But I wanted to be calm first. As time passed, one day, the son asked his father, 'Father, why don't you say anything these days?' He quietly smiled and replied, 'In the past, words came first, but now it's the heart that leads.' That calmness ultimately changed the entire family, and even after he left, the family continued to speak. It's not that my father has passed away, but rather that the calmness remains within us. He was a person who became the master of his emotions. Although he didn't express all those emotions, he embraced them and overcame them. The Buddha's final advice is not to be defeated by emotions, nor to transcend them, but simply to walk alongside them. They will lead you to a place of tranquility. Emotions are not a mountain to climb, but a forest to pass through together. As you walk step by step through that forest, using the wisdom of the Buddha as your guiding light, your inner self will transform from a turbulent river into a serene lake. Now, quietly close your eyes and say a word to yourself. You've done really well to endure all this time, even when your heart is shaken and anxiety rises. You've lived well up to this point. The emotions that shook you could never defeat you, because you are still here, in this place. Now, like a lotus, gently floating on the waves of those emotions. I hope that even if your day is shaken, your center remains at peace. May peace dwell in your heart. And when anxiety arises frequently, recite this like a mantra. The third method is to practice silent prayer. This feeling will also pass. I am not this feeling. This short phrase is a modern expression of the meditation practice taught by the Buddha to his disciples. When thoughts swirl like a storm, repeat it like a prayer. I will not miss this moment. I am breathing right now. Such a silent prayer has the power to gently release the heart without hardening it. When emotions envelop you, do not speak, do not act. Just stop and observe. If you look at it, that feeling will disappear, just as the ripples quietly fade. When a stone is thrown into a small pond, emotions also quietly collapse in the eyes of the observer. Emotions are not enemies trying to harm us. They are just a guest who is asking you to understand and sending signals to look at them. From now on, whenever emotions arise, do not fight or run away. Just observe quietly. At that moment, you are already walking the path of a practitioner. I hope that the wisdom of the Buddha quietly seeps into you, who has endured another day in silence, suppressing your emotions and holding back your heart. Remember that the moments when you endured without getting angry or anxious did not break you, but rather made you deeper and stronger. When anger or anxiety arises, the Buddha said this: "This video is a tranquil refuge and a path of practice for your weary heart." Tired from feelings of anger and anxiety? Why do we get hurt so easily and crumble at trivial words? What is the root of those emotions? And how can we manage that heart? In the teachings of the Buddha, we walk together on the path of keeping our minds not being swayed by emotions and quietly recovering ourselves. I hope this small video has quietly lit up in your hearts like a lantern. Even if it is not visible, the heart you endured today and the day you silently persevered will surely return as merit. Today I sincerely pray that your heart remains calm and peaceful without any wounds. May the compassion of Buddha always dwell in your hearts, dear friends.